Have you ever noticed how a narcissist can seem eerily calm until the moment you say the word no? In that instant, the air changes, their eyes shift, everything becomes silent and heavy, as if you've just declared war. But you haven't done anything wrong. You didn't yell, insult, or attack. You simply drew a small line, spoke softly, and said, "I'm not comfortable with this." To them, however, that boundary is an insult. In the narcissist's world, limits don't exist. Control is their oxygen, and when you start saying no, you're cutting off their air supply. You're doing the one thing they fear most, reclaiming your autonomy. If you've ever tried setting a boundary with a narcissist, you know that feeling. Confusion, guilt, and the emotional storm that makes you question whether you're being too harsh. But you're not. You're doing something healthy, something every real relationship needs. The problem is, to a narcissist, your boundary isn't a wall of safety, it's a rejection. And rejection, for them, is unbearable. They don't ask, "What do you need?" They ask, "How dare you do this to me?" So when you draw the line, they strike back, always. Their reaction isn't random, it's rehearsed. It's a script they've been performing their entire life. They'll start by making you feel guilty, then twist the truth, play the victim, and if all else fails, they'll punish you for daring to protect yourself. Understanding this is the first step out of the emotional whirlwind. Once you see the pattern, you stop being surprised, you stop blaming yourself, you begin to take back control, not of them, but of you. For healthy people, boundaries come naturally. They create safety, respect, and trust. But for a narcissist, a boundary is a wound to the ego. It reminds them that you are a separate being with your own mind, feelings, and desires. And that, to them, is unacceptable. In their world, relationships aren't about connection, they're about control. When you set a boundary, you're saying, "I'm no longer willing to be controlled." And that terrifies them. Because if they can't control your emotions, they lose their sense of power, the only thing that makes them feel valuable. That's why they retaliate, sometimes with cold silence, sarcasm, or blame, sometimes with anger, yelling, or emotional manipulation. But the goal is always the same: to pull you back into their orbit, to make you react, to drown you in guilt, and to make you forget why you drew that line in the first place. They want you to confuse self-respect with cruelty. They want you to believe that to keep the peace, you must stay quiet, bend, and please them. But the truth is, boundaries aren't selfish. They're declarations of self-respect, and someone who truly loves you will never feel threatened by your limits. They'll feel safe because of them. So before we go deeper into how a narcissist strikes back, remember this: their chaos is not your fault. You are not responsible for the storm they create. Your peace is not their loss. And your no is not cruelty. It's the beginning of freedom. When you start setting boundaries, a narcissist won't accept it quietly. They'll strike back in the most subtle, familiar ways, using the same tactics they've always relied on to keep you under control. They can't stand the feeling of losing power, so they'll do anything to pull you back in. And here are 5 ways they usually fight back. First, they play the victim. They'll make you believe you're the one hurting them. When you say you need some space, they sigh and say, "I just want us to be closer. Why are you so cold?" When you refuse to do something, they say, "You're so heartless. I just wanted a little affection." Every word is carefully chosen to press your guilt buttons, to make you feel bad for protecting yourself. And if you're an empathetic person, it's an easy trap to fall into. You start asking yourself, was I too harsh? Did I really hurt them? But remember this: real love never asks you to abandon yourself to keep someone else. Someone who truly values you will respect your boundaries, not make you feel guilty for having them. When the victim act stops working, they move to their second tactic: gaslighting, manipulation of perception. They'll pretend not to remember what you said or twist your words to make you doubt your own memory. You might say, "I told you clearly I don't want to be spoken to that way." They'll reply, "I don't remember you ever saying that." Or worse, you're imagining things. You always overreact. Slowly you start to question yourself. Am I being too sensitive? Did I remember it wrong? That's exactly what they want, for you to forget the truth and get lost in confusion. Once you're busy proving that your feelings are real, they've already won. Because at that point, you're no longer defending your boundary, you're defending your sanity. And they know it. Third, they'll accuse you of being controlling. When you say, "I can't stay if you keep yelling, I'll leave when that happens," they'll instantly fire back. "You're trying to control me. You don't respect me." They flip the script, turning you into the villain. Then you get pulled into a pointless argument, trying to explain that you're just protecting yourself. But they're not looking for understanding, they're looking for reaction. Every time you argue, you feed them proof that they still have influence over you. That's their fuel. The only way out is not to play. You don't have to prove anything. Boundaries are not about control, they're about peace. If none of that works, they turn to their fourth weapon, mocking and belittling your boundaries. They'll roll their eyes and say, "God, you're so sensitive," or "Relax, I was just joking." They turn your seriousness into a joke, making you feel small, silly, weak. It's their way of lowering your self-esteem until you shrink yourself down. Once you start fearing ridicule, you'll stop setting limits. They know that, and they use it as a weapon. And finally, when everything else fails, they punish you. They might go silent for days, disappear, cut off contact, or use others to isolate you. If you say you need time alone, they'll go out all night without telling you where they are. If you ask not to be insulted, they'll do it on purpose and then say, "You're too weak to handle love." It's their way of teaching you a lesson. Setting boundaries only brings pain. And because you fear the punishment, you start tearing down your own walls. But that's exactly when you need to stay alert. Because when they use punishment to react to your limits, they've just revealed who they really are. They're not looking for love, they're looking for power. And if you keep giving in, you'll stay trapped in that cycle. A place where peace only exists when you're silent and submissive. No one is worth the price of your freedom or self-respect. Once you can see these 5 counterattacks clearly, you realize something profound. They were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing control over you. And the moment you understand that, their entire game loses its power. After you understand how they strike back, there's a painful truth that everyone who's been through it must face. We often mistake false peace for real peace. When a narcissist gets angry, goes silent, or punishes you, you fear losing them. You fear losing that familiar rhythm, the illusion of connection, the fear of being alone, the dread of being disliked. And so, instead of holding your ground, you step back. You text first, you apologize, you try to clear things up, all just to restore that temporary calm. But every time you do that, you trade away another piece of yourself. You think you're keeping the peace, but in truth, you're keeping their control intact. They know this, and they use it to train you. Every time you set a boundary, they'll make you feel guilty or abandoned, until you start fearing your boundaries more than you fear them. In time, they teach you a cruel lesson, that to be loved, you must stay silent. To have peace, you must obey. And slowly, you forget that you ever had the right to say no. The truth is, a narcissist never seeks peace. They seek submission. They want everything quiet, not because they value calm, but because in that silence, they can hear their power echo. And you, the one who always tries to do the right thing, end up fighting invisible wars in your own mind, endlessly asking, "What could I have done better?" But that's not the real question. The real question is, Why am I enduring what's wrong just to keep someone who never intends to change? True peace doesn't come from pleasing them. It comes when you stop trading your self-respect for one argument. Free day. It comes when you realize that sometimes silence isn't peace, it's control in disguise. It comes when you finally understand that if you have to abandon yourself to be loved, it's not love, it's captivity. And one day you'll get tired. Not tired from fighting, but tired of shrinking yourself to fit inside their narrow limits. You'll realize you've lived too long in a cramped room built from guilt and fear. And only when you dare to open the door and step out, you'll feel the air, the light, and life. Real life, waiting for you. You cannot have peace while you keep betraying yourself. Every time you stay silent to keep them happy, you silence your own voice. Every time you apologize for saying no, you teach them that power belongs to them, not you. But the truth is, the power has always been yours. You just forgot it because fear became your habit. Real peace doesn't come from surrender. It comes from being honest with your own heart. No one has the right to make you feel guilty for wanting respect. No one has the right to demand your silence so they can stay comfortable. If you have to sacrifice your dignity to preserve peace, then it isn't peace, it's self-abandonment. And once you realize that, everything changes. You begin to see clearly. You don't need them to feel at peace. Because true peace is not when you stop losing people, it's when you stop losing yourself. Then comes a quiet moment, the kind of quiet that isn't sad, isn't angry, and doesn't need to explain itself. You just fall silent. Not the kind of silence a narcissist uses to punish, but the silence of awareness, of clarity. In that moment, you no longer want to win any argument, you just want peace. And that's the turning point, the moment you stop trying to make them understand and instead choose to protect yourself. When you stop reacting, the narcissist begins to panic. They no longer have fuel for their ego. They once controlled you with words, silence, glances, and guilt, but now none of it works. They text you, you don't respond. They provoke you, you stay calm. They mock you, you simply smile faintly. And to them, that is the worst nightmare imaginable. They've lost the ability to control your emotions. When they can no longer make you hurt, they lose their power. What they fear most isn't losing you, it's losing their ability to make you suffer. As long as you react, you remain their supply, the person they can test, manipulate, and feed their hollow ego with. But when your silence comes from peace instead of fear, they become like someone screaming into the void. No one's listening, no one's believing, no one's reacting. At this stage, they'll try everything. Sometimes they'll turn soft and apologetic. I know I was wrong, I'll change. Other times they'll lash out in rage, calling you ungrateful or accusing you of destroying the relationship. But you'll begin to see it clearly. Those words don't come from remorse. They come from fear of losing control. If they truly loved you, they would have respected your boundaries from the beginning, but they didn't. Because to them, love isn't respect. Love is possession. Then a strange kind of loneliness creeps in. Not because you've lost them, but because you're leaving behind the illusion you once believed was love. It feels like waking up from a beautiful but exhausting dream. You don't want to go back, yet you still feel empty. You remember their tenderness, their promises, the rare moments of happiness. But when you look deeper, you realize those moments weren't love. They were pause in a cycle of pain. They never truly loved you. They only loved the feeling of power they had over you. And when that truth sinks in, everything becomes clear. You no longer need to convince them to change. You no longer need to prove your worth. You just leave, quietly, without hate, without noise. Because leaving isn't failure. It's the silent victory of someone who finally learned how to love themselves. One day they'll realize just how powerful your silence really is. Not because it hurts them, but because it exposes the truth. No one believes their act anymore, and without an audience, their performance collapses. You'll realize you no longer need them to feel strong. You've become strong from the very weakness they once used to shame you for. You've learned that real love doesn't make you afraid, doesn't silence you, and doesn't force you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort. When you choose silence out of awareness, you cut the final thread that ties them to your mind. You don't need to hate them, and you don't even need to forgive. You simply let go. Not because they deserve to be forgotten, but because you deserve to be free. And from that moment on, you step out of their storm. All their power games lose meaning. They'll go searching for someone new to control, to continue their same performance. But you begin to live again, not as the wounded one, but as the awakened one. Because once you've seen the truth, you can never go back. And that is the moment your real rebirth begins. After all the push and pull, after every time you stood up and then stepped back, there will come a morning when you wake up and realize your fear has changed shape. It's no longer the fear of losing them. It's the fear of going back to the place where you once lost yourself. When you've gone far enough to look back, you'll see the whole picture, that every game, every reaction, every cycle revolved around one thing: control. When you finally understand that, the real healing begins. Healing isn't about trying to forget them or proving that you're okay. It's about rebuilding yourself, piece by piece, after being worn down by manipulation. You learn how to sit in silence without feeling lonely. You learn how to say no without feeling guilty. You learn how not to react, not to argue, not to explain, because you finally understand that your peace doesn't need anyone's permission. There will be days when old memories return, the laughter, the smiles, the sweet words that once made you believe it was love. But this time, you'll see them differently. You'll realize those tender moments were bait, tools to keep you tied to the cycle. You'll stop asking, why did they do that, and start asking, why did I stay? Not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself more deeply. When you begin to set boundaries again, not just with others but with yourself, something miraculous happens. Self-respect starts to heal the wounds that false love left behind. You no longer feel the need to explain everything, to prove that you're a good person, or to take responsibility for other people's emotions. You start to live authentically, even if it means walking alone for a while. But this kind of solitude feels different. It's not cold, it's calm, clear, and free. The narcissist may still talk badly about you, still try to pull you back, still insist that you're the problem. But now, their words echo into emptiness. They no longer pierce your heart, because what they once held, your emotions, you've taken back. They can scream, disappear, apologize, or beg for forgiveness, but you're no longer the same. You've seen them, and once you truly see, you can never unsee. Then you'll realize every boundary you once feared to set was actually a doorway to freedom. Every time you said no, you didn't lose someone, you chose yourself. Every time you stayed silent, it wasn't out of fear, but out of peace. And every time you walked away, you weren't leaving a person, you were leaving an entire cycle of pain. True peace doesn't come when others change, it comes when you stop waiting for them to. It comes when you understand that compassion is not the same as tolerance, and forgiveness does not mean letting someone hurt you again. And when you stand on the other side of the pain, looking back at it all, you'll see the truth. Every struggle, every tear, every time you thought you were breaking, it was all leading you here. And to this place where you can love without losing yourself, give without disappearing, and feel peace. even when you stand alone. Because in the end, the greatest victory isn't making them regret losing you. It's that you came back to yourself, whole, clear and free. And if you're listening to these words, it's probably because you've already walked through enough pain to understand this one truth. No one is worth losing yourself for. Your silence is not weakness, it's strength. Your decision to walk away isn't because you stopped loving. It's because you finally chose to love the right person, yourself. Remember, you don't have to save anyone. You only need to save your peace. You can't teach someone to respect your boundaries if they've never learned to respect themselves. Then that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to keep your heart pure but no longer naive. To love but no longer self-destruct. To trust but no longer forget yourself. You may still feel empty right now. You may still be afraid. You may still miss them. But trust this, those feelings will soften with time. One day, when you look back, you'll smile. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've overcome. If this video made you feel seen, comforted, or even just a little less alone, that's enough. Share it with someone who's also learning to stand up again, to set boundaries, to love themselves back to life. And before you go, remember this. The person who truly loves you will never fear your boundaries. They'll be grateful for them, because only when you know how to hold on to yourself can you love freely, lightly, and in true peace. See you in the next video, where we'll continue this journey of healing, so that every wound becomes not a mark of suffering, a proof of the strength you've found again.